All right, guys, welcome back to another fantastic episode of the Three Brothers Podcast. We are here in our satellite studio in Charlotte, North Carolina, at John's apartment. So we're excited to be filming here. It's our first time, and I have a topic that is near and dear to my heart. So this year is the 20th anniversary of the very first video game I've ever played as a young child. I was 6 years old.
The first of many.
The first of
You
many.
started an avalanche for the rest of your life.
Right.
Some would call it a downward spiral.
Some would.
Others an upward.
Right. Depends on who you ask.
Yes.
But long story short, my first ever video game system was the Nintendo GameCube. And because I was only 6 years old, my parents were looking for a age-appropriate game to give me. So, the one they chose was a game called the Tasmanian Tiger. It was a 3D platformer that was kind of like this independent Australian company's answer to Mario 64, like Jack and Daxter, Ratchet and Clank.
There were a lot of 3D platformers that were coming out at the time, and most of them were animal buddies.
Right. Some of them are animals. Some of them
were Italians.
You're right.
Yeah.
A couple of them Italian. So, long story short, I know you guys have no idea what this game is.
Okay.
Never heard of it.
I've never heard of it, but I understand the Ratchet and Clank genre.
Sure. So I just wanted to show this to you because it's the 20th anniversary. I'm excited about it. They came out with some footage, and the backstory behind the actual development of the game is really cool. And in the last few years, they've been creating HD remasters so they could port the old games over to the most recent platforms. So Nintendo Switch, Steam, Xbox, and PS4. And so that's just the whole project they're going through right now. And I just want to show you this and see what your reactions are, see what you think of the game, etc., etc.
Yeah, I find this kind of stuff so interesting.
Why
It's
so?
these darling games, you know what I'm saying? It was certainly not the most popular of its kind. If anything, you could consider it a clone of the genre. But it had a certain unique quality, whether it's just the Australian nature of it, and
Right.
it makes it kind of like this darling property that is it's still worthwhile to bring up.
Was the nostalgia factor. That if you never played it when you were 6 years old, we wouldn't be talking about this right now.
That's true. That's very true. And it is very much geared towards young children. But it has this sort of it is made by Australians for Australians. So it has this very unique take on what you would see as a character. Even
Shrimp on the bone in the game.
actually kind of. So I'm gonna start off by showing you a video of the first and I think only commercial advertisement that introduced the game at the time.
So, what kind of bullshit is this?
There's a new hero out there, and he's not going to let anyone stand in his way. The Tasmanian Tiger. Waiting for everyone.
EA made this? EA Games was the, I guess you could call it the father company, but it was made by a company called Chrome Studios.
EA Publisher.
They were the publisher, right? Correct, the publisher.
That
A big studio picked that up. Wow.
Yes, it was a kind of a big deal for this independent studio who created the game, and that particular advert is very funny because they're taking direct shots at all their competitors.
because that was super dark. They were suspended. It was
Right.
almost like a hospital room.
Exactly.
And they were being
Treated
were,
for boomerang memes,
yes.
which actually.
But they were as if they were pulling the plug.
Give me one
Oh,
second.
yes.
This is my replica boomerang. I don't know where I got this. It says Queensland, so it's actually from
Maybe you threw it in a past life and it just came back to you.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe Christopher said something. But yeah, no. I have this just as a fun little like prop because I really love the game and I'm enthusiastic about it. But it's not a real.
Is that from the game?
It looks like it could be from the game, but it's not. It's not like a.
What is the animal drawn on that? Is that like a Tasmanian Tiger?
It's a kangaroo.
Wait, is this an Australian themed boomerang?
Yes, of course. All boomerangs are Australian themed by heritage.
I understand that now, but
Have you ever thrown that boomerang and if it actually like?
It's not a real boomerang. It's flat on one side.
But it's not a tie. The Tasmanian Tiger boomerang. It's just a boomerang.
And it's not even a real boomerang. Because you can't throw it on the
Real
come back.
boomerangs aren't real.
Boomerangs are real. Very much so.
It was more of a jab.
Okay, cool. Yeah, you look like one of the characters in the ad right now.
Do I? The ad was actually pretty terrifying. It was a little dystopian,
It was very.
and it was quick.
It was very bold, though, because for an underdog to take a shot at the big Sonic the Hedgehog, Spyro the Dragon, Crash Bandicoot, like they were all on hospital beds with boomerangs on their side, and it was like basically saying we're the new kid on the block.
And they didn't even highlight Ty. He was just like walking through the aisle.
Wasn't there another game around that time called a monkey ball or something? Or was that monkey in that plastic ball that would like bounce around?
Different
Yes, there was.
style game, but it was that time period.
It wasn't a platformer, but yeah, it was around that time. So I want to show you. They came up with a 20th anniversary sort of video, and it goes through the history of the game. The producers talk about it. I just want to get your thoughts on it because I know Chris, you kind of like talking about the backstory behind certain things, whether
I
it
love the little backstory.
be music, movies, TV shows, any sort of media that you enjoy. Just I find talking to you that the things you love the most is like how they came into being, more than not necessarily more than depending on what it is, but almost more than like what the product actually is, what the franchise actually is.
I love the little stories that sort of make up
Right.
how things are made. Like I almost imagine in the history, like there could be documentaries made about so many little insignificant things. Like some of my favorite things in the world are documentaries that were made about things that no one actually cares about. Because it's like everything has like a little story. So I am very interested in stuff like this. I had a question I forgot. John?
Let's roll the tape.
Yeah. All right.
Oh, when was the 20th? So, like, when was the actual birthday?
Month-wise, they might tell you in this video. I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay.
But it came out in 2002, so this is the year that it's 20. But I guess we'll find out.
You know, 20, 30 years ago is when platforming games first started coming out. Like with Mario Brothers, it was all 2D and then it evolved into 3D and we got character platformers out of it. Great titles like Spyro the Dragon, Crash Bandicoot, Jak and Daxter, and Ty the Tasmanian Tiger is a game right up there with those. It's endearing, it's charming, and it's a fun experience.
Ty's meant a lot to a lot of people all across the world. It's just because the game itself is just so family friendly and fun and doesn't take itself too seriously, and people have grown up playing the game. So with the games coming out as they were growing up, it's kind of meant different things
And
to
look,
them for different.
There's the boomerang.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't look exactly like that one, but it's very reminiscent.
Yeah, mine doesn't glow though.
Well, we can work on that.
Parts of their life, and they just love a little bit.
You could say Thai is a little bit different from everything else in that it's very Australian. It's aggressively Australian, down to the language, the slang. It's a very big part is the slang. So it's not just some guy with an American accent saying ripper.
G'day, mate. You little ripper!
It's this weird fantasy that it's just no one else can do like we've been able to do.
It's a big cultural piece, really, because a lot of other games that are made in Australia, they're not Australian. They don't have Maury and his mate. It's just, the jokes still work today.
And I think that's something that's really picked up.
I love that. As if to say that, like, saying mate is like a bad joke.
Offensive to Australia.
The jokes still land today because he says mate a lot. But that's just how they talk.
That's really funny. They seem like they've been cornered into this room to talk about the game.
I just think it's so funny. They are the original team who designed the first game. And there have been like 4 games. But the point is, like, they were like in their 20s when they made the game. And now 20 years later, they're like old. And they're like, yeah, the jokes still land. It's very
Like, their observations are valid, although, I don't know. Yeah, we keep watching, but they're not like defining anything like core, like at its core that makes it different than the other things.
They will.
Other than that,
It's just the Australianism. So people love that. We went very hardcore on. We are not softening it for the Americans. Our job is to make American kids speak Australian slang.
They're indoctrinating
That's
American youth
20 years later.
with Australian
You're on, mate.
We had wanted to do a platforming game for a while. In the early 2000s, publishers just weren't interested in doing that stuff, and we thought with the PlayStation 2, that whole genre is dead. And then the CEO came back, Robert, and he said, well, Sony's doing a platforming game. And we're like, what, Sony's doing one? Well, maybe we should put our idea together to do something that we want to do. And we sat around in the mid room at the Pro, which we call the blue room because of the blue couches. And we just sitting there on a Friday afternoon, just shooting ideas back and forth. So we wanted to show an animal that wasn't done to death, like Crash Bandicoot or platypuses or, there's all the generic stuff. I didn't want a kangaroo because it was just too obvious. And then Tasmanian Tiger's like, well, it's cool. It's like, not a lot of people really know about it. They're extinct, so that was the story edge we came up with. And
I love in the little sketches, they had his like turnarounds, and they had his boomerang, and it said ties around.
Mm-hmm.
You got named Ty, because we had a mate called Tyrone. And I think that's just Australian.
They had a mate called Tyrone. I think that's so funny. They named after their friend, Tyrone.
Right.
In itself, it was just a thrown out thing from the hip that stuck. He's a very happy character. He's always in there to give it a go. There's nothing that really gets him down. So he's that kind of, you beauty, mate. I'll do it.
No worries, Sheila. I'll find them for you.
One of my favourite things about Ty, the character himself, is his obliviousness. He's very capable. He knows how to get the job done, but a lot of the time he just doesn't realise what's going on around him a little bit. It took a couple of games for him to realise that Shazza really liked him. Sometimes he misses things that people say, goes a little bit over his head, and I think that makes him really endearing to the players as well, because they know what's going on even if he doesn't.
Really, the next step after Steve came up with Ty the character, we had thought, what would be the coolest thing we could show off with the boomerangs to then try and show to a publisher? So for that, we put him in a swamp. We had some crocodiles swimming around, some crickets, a lot of wildlife, a lot of trees, grasses moving, and then him with his run, jump, and then boomerang throw mechanic at the tiki torches. And this is actually the first demo that I took to the stage to show around the publishers. Steve did up the box cover art. We created a little manual inside, and that's the disc that you could load and play, and that was the first level of Ty that we then was able to get the game made from. And yeah, it was received really, really well, and if you look at him, he hasn't changed much at all.
He went from 3 pages of rough sketches of shapes of faces to a drawing of Ty with green shorts and sneakers, which then became the same drawing traced over with green shorts and no sneakers, and that was the same Ty we used for the game.
A lot of people in animation will spend.
I just love the fact that they had a dream and they had to pitch it to different companies. They were like, well, we could do what Sonic the Hedgehog is doing or whatever Sony's platformer was at the time,
Right.
which they had many. Sly Cooper, all this other stuff.
Right.
But like, they were just like, okay, let's sketch it up and then have a drawing, and we'll take it over to the States and see if anybody will buy it.
Yeah.
Which I think is such an underdog story. It's so cool.
That is really cool. They had a big team.
Well,
Like seeing all the.
I see like 5 people at least right now. But did you see those? Did you see the old school monitors and like computers they're working on?
Yeah.
I can't even fathom like what the technology, how limited it was back then compared to our modern video games.
Right. I really like the aesthetic of the whole technology. Like even the low poly output of the game.
Right.
I really like that how it looks.
And it's a little higher poly than say a Final Fantasy VII, which came out in 1990.
Which is super.
Something.
Which I like that especially.
Those are fun. Yes, I love the graphics just in terms of like the retro style.
Right. Those old limited graphic styles I really like. I really like it.
And it made the designers get a lot more creative.
Right, you had to kind of use shapes and color, and dare I use the word vibe to convey what you wanted instead of ultra realism or.
They gave it a charm, a special charm, where almost the player of the game had to fill in the blanks a little bit.
Right.
And you get to project like your own, I guess, creativity on it.
And it also makes for good world building. So when you're limited in the realism that you can produce, it gives way for creativity. Because now, okay, it can't be hyper-realistic because the technology doesn't support it. But we can now create a fictional world in our own image using whatever tools we have at our
That's why I
disposal.
don't love realism in general. Like some things are really good when they're realistic, but I find it a lot more inspiring when things choose and it's set out to create their own vision.
Right.
What that kind of relates to that sort of world building episode we filmed a while back. Last time we were down here. No, but yeah, I really enjoy that. Like, I feel like now when it comes to technology in relation to games and even film, there's so few limitations that I wish there were. I'm kind of waiting for the next frontier to be pushed into like a new early adopters of some sort of technology or something, where we see limitations again, and we can kind of see the charm, say, come back into media.
I hate to bring it up because I despise this form of technology. Not that it's inherently bad. I just prefer not to be part of it. But the metaverse is probably that new frontier where you have this virtual reality world that people are diving
They gotta pick something else than that. I don't like metaverse.
I don't either. But yeah, no.
That's another thing to talk about.
Yeah, months trying to come up with character creation, and Steve nailed it in a day. And that just shows you what a special person he is.
We spent about a year basically trying to pitch to publishers. So we've been going around showing it, like we had 2 publishers to pick from. There's going to go with. And then we picked.
Like the behind the scenes looks so cool. Like these back computers. Like I love that.
Right? And I don't know if I'm correct, but that kind of looks like a Metroid Prime character. That looks like Samus a little bit. I don't know if that's true.
See, that gives me nostalgia though, because I was born, I think, right in the middle of kids who grew up during that era of those blocky computers that were like super brand new, and technology wasn't just like a new fad society, but it wasn't advanced. So you had like the VHS, CDs, which were
Windows 95.
Windows 95, still big blocky computers with the same aesthetic, Macintoshes. Like that gives me a lot of charm, like that old technology, and the video games of that era, I think, continue to convey that.
And websites too.
Websites, man.
Websites used to be the most creative.
They were just like, some of them were so basic and some of them were so awesome.
Right.
Tumblr.
There were so
harped on that.
I agree. Yeah, like websites, they'd be so colorful. They would have like a red background and like green walls.
Well, think about like even the logo design back then. You had like Apple, which was like an apple, but it was rainbow.
Right.
And the Windows logo had the 4 colors within the panes of the window. Like everything was like, let's use color to really make it pop. And now we're in a kind of minimalistic monochrome age where it's like either gray or very pastel colors.
Yeah, it's trying to like get out of your eye's way, but I loved how eye-catching that was. Because it was like now there's only like 4 types of websites, really, and they just kind of like do the same kind of website. But back then it was like this was the new medium to innovate.
Right.
Anyway, I seeing like you, when I saw like the footage of the behind the scenes of that, I was like, whoa. that's like never gonna be seen again.
You're probably right.
One, and then we had Ian on board, and one of the founders of the company got a meeting with him and goes, you should use the boomerang more. I was like, yeah, he's right, probably, but we just didn't use it as a motif or anything. It's like, there's some boomerangs you use them. You should use them more. I'd love to see a boomerang that can fly around and control. So like, oh, this is like fun, yeah, we can do that.
So we're just amazed at the coolness of a new mechanic. I mean, it's really.
So just for your guys' edification, they're showing this one specific boomerang called the Doomerang, which you don't get till the end of the game. It's the only one you can control.
I was gonna ask. It looks like they're like
Right.
Yeah.
It's the only one you can control like a drone almost. The rest of them just go forward and then come back to you.
oh,
So it's very like point and shoot.
okay. I was gonna ask about that.
It's hard to bring something into a genre that's been around for so long with so many other great characters, and to have that new twist, not only being uniquely Australian, but to be able to use his range to throw for combat, to glide. They just really like that unique twist of just a new play on the character action platformer.
So I was actually on a separate team at the time. We did a surfing game, and the engine for that game that I wrote got used for Thai. And we worked back and forth between the teams to develop the engine to mutate it into Thai. But of course the engine by itself doesn't have any of the content. So we have all the artists who are making the characters, and we have the artists who are making the scenery. We have the designers who are working out all the jokes and all the lines. We have the cutscene people.
This runs back to our world building episode where we kind of talked about this, but there's storyboarding and just imagining this like world that's loosely based on Australia because it takes place in Australia, but it's very mystical in terms of the storyline of the game. It's just so cool.
I love that.
Animating.
Well, I have to admit it, you're not doing such a bad job, mate. Bonza!
It is a massive team that works on a game like this. Within the art department and the character department, we worked on pretty much every single character and across the game. Each character would probably take from initial concept through to final implementation about 2 months of work. When I first jumped into the Thai project, I came on as a lead programmer. It was my first project as a lead, and it was a big learning experience for everyone on the team. I think it was one of the biggest projects that we've worked on, and it was also a massive learning experience for me, having to run a team of up to 10 programmers. Ultimately, it all came down to me to get a successful product out the door.
I was very much a novice when we started with all things game development, so I was a sponge. There were all these people around me that knew so much more, so I just tried to work really hard. And
I love trying to like pick out
most of my job was handing out
their
tasks
younger
to
selves
other
in the videos.
programs on the team, but I kept some for myself, like the floating platforms and having them tilt depending on where you stood on the platform, or if you had enemies on there with you, it balanced out.
That's kind of cool. The physics that they programmed into
Little
this game
detail there.
are very.
One of the defining moments
Did you notice
was
that?
one where we were right in the thick of trying to make it
Child,
the first time around was
I knew
when
the
the
platform,
turkey chase
but
mini
I
game
didn't
finally
know
started
whether it was
working.
like
the directors
a
had come back
balancing act when you're an enemy.
and were telling us about this game mechanic where the first few times it's really difficult, but then it subtly gets easier in the background and you get a sense of reward from completing that. And
When I first watched this video a few weeks ago, I was genuinely surprised by what you just said. So there is one specific mini game where you have to chase a turkey who steals this like gem from you, and he's gonna explain it in a second. But like, basically, they programmed it so the first 2 attempts, or the first like however long you try to do it, are extremely hard and actually impossible to do it. And then once the game sees that you failed like once or twice, it reduces the difficulty, so you get a sense of accomplishment.
I've heard a lot of games do that actually.
I've never heard that before.
I heard that somewhere, and it's a very common practice.
That's so interesting because I remember the feeling playing that game. I thought that was so hard, and then eventually you do it, and you're like, I don't even know how I got that. So the first 3 times, I had such trouble chasing this turkey around, blah blah blah, and you know, it was kind of enlightening just to hear them say that.
And I remember completing that with a scrub turkey chasing challenge, and the directors were reviewing it at the time, and it just worked perfectly. And certainly, as someone who's new to games, that was a really exciting moment for me personally.
Once you have this little mini game where you come up to this turkey and he steals the thunder egg you're about to grab, and he goes running off and it's like, what? We've worked on the game for about 1.5 years at this point. This is the first time people thought, oh, it's actually a game.
The artists, the programmers, the testers, you know, just the passion and work they put into it. It was just incredible because I would go overseas, do my thing, show off the next build, go through the milestones and stuff, and then you'd come back and it's the extra work they'd done in between my trips. It was just amazing to see the game evolve over the time during the period that they put into it.
My main role on TIE was as the sound design, so I created all of the sound effects. It's something like 80 to 90% of the sound effects from the first TIE game were me banging a pot or breaking a stick in my backyard or in my office. I also created the music for TIE, and I did provide a few voices for things like critters going so about probably 30% of those are me confusing the people in the next room.
When you're working with a group of people for such a long time, you take every advantage you can to make sure that you annoy them as much as possible in a friendly way.
So we had quite a few late nights. Some people would get tired and
They have a lot of footage.
I was about to say, I love how they filmed the delivery guys stacking pizzas, like, as they're working. John's face is like, cool.
I don't understand why. I mean, it's cool, but like that's a lot of footage. Yeah.
Well, you keep in mind, like, they're an independent studio. This is the first game that they ever came out with. It was kind of a big deal for them,
I guess.
And as we observed before, they were published by EA Games, which was like a huge deal back in the day.
Get a cup of water and just pour it on them while they're asleep. Everyone got along really well and kept the mood up. You had the Gold Master disc, which is the final version that went out, had to be bug-free because you couldn't patch the game. The amount of stress in those final weeks, making sure we get all the bugs fixed. We had a permanent testing team who just played the game day in, day out.
And we were literally at Gold Master night, and our QA manager at the time had stayed up really late, was really tired, and thought, oh, maybe we should do a foul language test. And there was literally one little level in TIE that one of our artists forgot to delete, and had that stayed there, all that product would have to be recalled and redone again. So we dodged a bullet on that one.
The original commercial
And
for TIE.
that's before the days of like DLC and like patches.
Yeah, they just said.
Which is crazy. Can you imagine having to recall your entire product?
Well, even like that one guy was saying, he had to go physically to the US to show updates on the game to the publisher.
Right.
They couldn't send it electronically, which is crazy.
Well, there's that, and the fact that you probably wouldn't want to trust anybody with it. You wouldn't want to like send it electronically because then they could leak it.
Right.
So you went with a physical copy to show as a demonstration.
Right, that's right.
That Electronic Arts made with the hospital scene. We thought it was going to be very interesting to see how that was received by the general public. I'm like, very shocked. Because it is very, I call it ballsy. So you've got TIE in the hospital and all these guys are all bandaged up, but they're not listed as like Sonic or Crash or anything like that. It's like Bandicoot, Hedgehog, Dragon, little boomerang stuck in them and stuff. And TIE just looks at the ball and it's like, hey. That was game advertising at that time as well. It was go hard or go home with that sort of thing. So you weren't going to release a new character in that space without saying that it was really going to take the fight to the establishments. When TIE was first released, we went to America. I think we went to a Best Buy or one of those large chains and just walked around the shelves like, here's the GameCube version, here's the PlayStation 2 version, here's the Xbox version. It was a pretty cool feeling. It's always a cool feeling when you see yourself in the store. Just walk up there.
It really did take a lot of fun.
You know how amazing that a little small studio in Australia
That's gotta go great though.
can have their own product in some of the
Right,
biggest
and they
stores
came to
in
America
the world.
to see
And It just
It's
made us
so-
feel as
it's so
though,
cool.
you know,
You get that
we're just
international
as good as
significance of
everybody
the game.
else. And, you know, even though we're so far away, it's like, yeah, we can do it. It's kind of like that like, little engine that could.
It actually did really well, and it was this funny thing that a year later, it was out selling their big, one of their big superhero movie licenses that came out that year by quite a bit for an old game. It was still selling regularly, the same number every month for 12 months. It had not dropped off. So Taiwan were released 20 years ago, 2002. Tai 2 was a couple of years later in 2004, but there were a few variations and iterations of Tai 2 that got made and dropped along the way there. We did find a new publisher in Activision, and we did Tai 3, and that was like a very short, quick, 1 year long game. We tried to like fix up the bugs that we had with Tai 2 using the same engine and sort of.
So just for like personal experience, I was in elementary school when Tai 2. I had no idea, like you don't follow video game publishers when you're that young. You don't know what's going on.
Right.
I was looking through a magazine called Boys Life, which was actually produced by the Boy Scouts of America. And I had interest in that because I was a Cub Scout.
Yes.
And so like I'm in the library at my elementary school, which was a class every week. And we went to the library, we were able to like take books out, read them, bring them back the next week, whatever. And I would take out Boys Life from the library because I had an interest in that. And I remember taking one home and opening it up, and I was flipping through it like you would read a magazine, and they had a huge full-page advert for Tai 2. And I'm like, this was like 2 years after the first one came out, so I'm 8 years old. I literally like lost my mind. I was like showing my mom, my dad, so excited for this game.
Oh.
And this was like the only thing I wanted because it was the sequel to my favorite and first ever game.
Right.
So like,
oh, that's cool.
That happened, and I had almost an identical experience the next year when they had the same full-page advert for the third Tai game.
Right.
So that being said, it happened twice. Lightning doesn't usually strike twice, but it did in this case.
Right.
So every single year following the third announcement,
I
would look in the October issue of Boys Life for the advert, and they never came out with it.
Oh, that's sad. It just had to have just enough to get you in the Pavlov loop.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, but it was a very exciting 2 occasions. It was great. At the
That's
time.
awesome. That's a great feeling. John and I definitely had that.
What was something that you guys were looking forward to as kids?
We really had a balance stuff. Although that happens.
In terms of video games, was there one that we actually found out about and like we're just so hyped to follow?
Video games? Not as much because we didn't get into games until later.
Yeah.
I mean, when we found out that I remember this was a big one for us when we found out that we had rented Lego Star Wars Complete Saga from the library and played it on Wii, and we loved that game. And then a little while went by, and then we realized, can we take, because you used to be able to take games out from the library. Mm-hmm. So then we went back, and we realized it was there, and we were like, can we have this again? Because we didn't understand this really. And then we found out that our save file is stored in the Wii. So we were able to get our old save file back. That was pretty crazy. Also, this isn't a video game, but we really were into this board game called Hero Escape. And
right, you showed me that.
Yes, and I think when we discovered it, we got pretty hyped. And there was stuff in there that got us excited. But I can't remember as well, because I was younger.
I think it was because we would watch Transformers, what was it, Armada episodes on Hasbro's video player online. It was Armada and Cybertron, and in the list of episodes, it would have other Hasbro properties, which would include G.I. Joe and things like that.
Right.
And they would tag Hero Escape, so we saw a few of those videos while watching those episodes, and that's how we got into it.
Yeah. I'm vaguely familiar with Hero Escape, although I've never played it. Do they ever license other Hasbro properties?
Dungeons and Dragons got a collab with it.
And they did a Marvel expansion.
That's it? Oh, very cool. I could see like Transformers being part of it, or even like a Lord of the Rings type deal. It is almost like
fantasy.
Fantasy, yeah.
I really loved the original things about Hero Ski. I could talk. We could do a whole episode of Hero Ski. I'm not trying to get on top.
No, I get it.
But yeah, I guess it's not the identical thing with the magazine, but we definitely had our moments with like, because we were also magazine kids as well. So we had moments like looking through stuff and being like really hype. I remember, but I didn't know a lot. Like John was always telling me what was going on. But anyway,
Yeah.
Sort of do what we could in the time. We had a smaller budget. Then the company worked on a few other things for a few years, and we then started on our remaster path on Steam in 2016, and we couldn't believe the response. It was absolutely fantastic, and to see the number of people who obviously remembered Ty and loved him so much. And it certainly was very, very good for us to see that Ty 1 was in the top 10 rated games on Steam for quite a while by user ratings.
The number one question we were getting from the fans was, can you take this to consoles? And so they started asking, can you bring Ty to consoles? And that's where the Kickstarters came into play. We needed help. We needed the fans to rally around us, and they did. So in August of 2019, we launched a Kickstarter for Ty the Tasmanian Tiger. It was a 30-day Kickstarter. We weren't sure if it was going to succeed. We came out just asking for $50,000 for Ty for the Nintendo Switch. But we got our funding in 2 days. So then we did stretch goals for PlayStation 4, Xbox, we weren't sure. And we ended up making a funds to do all 3 platforms.
And it was so gratifying to see how quickly it was backed and exceeded everything that we expected. But then when it was funded, the realisation set in that we actually had to get it done now. But that was a really good feeling, because we knew at that point that we would be able to do it and be able to bring to life the extra bonus to Ty that we wanted to. For the HD remasters, there are a few things that were a bit interesting in trying to find some of those assets. All of the backups were on tape, which we couldn't read anymore. We managed to buy a second-hand tape drive of the right type from eBay, but that still didn't work either. So we actually didn't have some of the assets we needed, and eventually we were browsing through Ty 2's assets and found an entire directory that had accidentally been copied in there that had Ty 1 assets in it. And we also had another lot where we couldn't find some of the source code we needed. And eventually our lawyer from the United States sent us a CD that had a zip file on it that was password protected that we thought might have the code in it, but we didn't know what the password was. We ended up actually using an online group to crack the password of the zip file, and that's actually how we got some of the source code we needed for the re-releases. Oh, it's pretty funny.
Crazy.
I just want to talk about that, because that happens all the time with these old games that they remaster. It happened with Kingdom Hearts 1. They lost the entire asset library and source code for Kingdom Hearts 1, and when they did the HD remasters, they had to recreate the game from scratch. And just to hear these guys, like, how lucky they got.
Right, Big League was a fun
In the assets of the second game, they were able to find the assets of the first game. It's so fortuitous, you know? Very cool. I think that's so charming of a story, you know, like a background story.
Yeah. No, I'm listening.
Alright. So.
Because we had nothing. It would not have happened if it wasn't for that.
So when I remaster a game, it tends to be a case of look at what people remember the game is, but the memories are different. So you'll actually think the game was a lot better than it really was. So if a remaster, you add little features, your brain, when you see the game, you just think that's the game that it was. When you compare the remaster to the original, you suddenly realize, oh my god, this remaster has all these new features that we've added. But your brain's just thinking, oh, this is just the game I used to play. This is exactly how I remember it, because you just remember it being better than it was. It's working out.
That guy, I love that guy.
In your mind, it had shadows, but you go back and it didn't really.
His voice is funny too.
It had some depths of field. We put in some modern effects, like SSA or anything, just to make it look.
So when these remastered versions came out, I downloaded them on the Switch instead of buying physical copies. And I 100% of them both in like a day. The first and the second one. And the only ones out right now. But
so when the third comes out, you're buying that ASAP.
Right. And to be honest with you, they're such simple, straightforward games that they can be challenging for young children. But I knew how to play them. I remembered like
Right.
what to do, blah blah blah. I mean, it took me like a day. I should get like everything. It's just a fun, reminiscent experience. Yeah. And the Switch is a very accessible console because you can move around with it, take it anywhere.
Of course, following Ty the Tasmanian Tiger, everyone was asking, when are you going to do version 2, Bush Rescue? When is that one coming out? We also needed a little bit of help for that. And amazingly, we hit our funding goals of $75,000 in 8.5 hours. We had over 3,500 people support us.
So real quick, the second game is like completely leagues storyline wise. It takes it to a whole nother level. The first game is like you are the lone survivor of this cat. I'm not gonna spoil the whole storyline, but like your arch nemesis has thrown the other members of your species and your family technically into another dimension. And you are the lone Tasmanian tiger that you know of.
Right.
And you have to like collect these mystic talismans that will open the portal to get your family back. Right? And it's all very like, just the levels are very like bare, kind of like native Australian. It's steeped in like mysticism, but it's like there are animals running around, blah blah blah. And very low tech, right? The second game, you're riding in helicopters, you're driving jeeps, you got these like they call them.
I saw the mech.
Yeah, they call them bunyips, but they're just mechs. They're like exoskeleton mechs.
Right.
So like it just took to a whole nother level where like it's just insane. All these
So that's all
vehicles.
too. There's no tech in the first one.
There's very, very, very little tech in the first one. So it's this idea that like Ty succeeded in his quest for the first game, and the industrial revolution of his world
Of the Tasmanian Tigers.
of the Tasmanian Tigers took place between the first and second games, and it's crazy because you have this koala who's like your friend, and he's a scientist, and he makes all your boomerangs for you, and he like also invents things. So apparently the storyline is as if to say like he developed this entire I don't know like town called Oromudgee.
Right.
And you lead a team called Bush Rescue, and you basically like go out into Australia and like just rescue people who are having issues. And the main villain of the game, the first game, he comes back in the second and the third one. Although in the third one he's more of like an anti-hero. He's kind of like he takes a step back. He's not really a villain. Kind of helps you even when he's out for his own purposes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's morally complex for children's series.
It definitely is. Yeah, because it shows you that like when a greater foe arises, you might have to put aside your differences and team up with your enemy, even though you just spent the last 2 video games fighting them. That's kind of cool.
It's really great to have the community surrounding us and helping us out.
And the cool thing was with the Kickstarter too, we did stuff like figures, and the swim shorts were great. We did these tight swim shorts. I wear them all the time. We got actually, well, these turned out really good. This bright red tie sun.
This guy.
We did
Troublesome.
albums and stuff for the first one. We did a comic. All this cool little bric-a-brac.
And we did.
So I am a backer of the Kickstarter.
I was gonna ask, did you back it?
I did, and I have already received 2 copies of the comic book.
Oh, that's amazing.
These are my rewards for backing the Kickstarter, the ones I chose at least. So I have the first issue of the comic book and the second issue of the comic book.
How many are there?
So far, there are only 2. I think they're planning on making more as the Kickstarter goes on.
Are you gonna open them?
I'm gonna read them eventually. I put them in these sleeves because I have a lot of comic books at home, so I already had protective cases available for them. But I think I'm gonna read them. I heard that the plan for these comics were to set up the next tie game. So the storyline kind of starts here and then evolves into whatever tie game they will be making in the future. Because they want to make a new one eventually after the remasters are done.
Right.
So I'm really like excited about these because I love comic books and the artwork is just really beautiful. So
that's really
cool. I'm gonna show the camera real quick. Cool. But yeah.
Did a vinyl of the soundtrack for the first game. So much of what we do now is all digital to actually be able to hold the music on a vinyl LP, it's a spin out for me, to be honest.
You're throwing
It's
a
a
record
on a
like a
PlayStation 2 game that it's even going to be part of the
Do
conversation.
you guys have a record player?
Decades later.
No.
And I
No.
really do appreciate the
I have
fact
a lot
that
of
people are
friends
still
who are into,
asking for things like
vinyl
guitar
records.
tabs and people recording covers of the song and sticking it on YouTube. That is something you don't get on too many projects, and it's just been
That's
amazing.
you.
There is a very decent fan base out there for the game and the characters. It's good to see the old fans and also seeing new fans come along over this 20-year period. It's brilliant.
So what you really like is for other people to like your games, and there's still this huge
Oh,
audience
my
out there
boomerang.
that's making fan fiction for it, and they still love it.
That's
And you
so
go,
funny.
okay, this is actually something that people want. So that just keeps you going, it keeps you vibrant in the industry, it keeps you happy to be doing the work.
It's great to see that people are still remembering their youth 20 years on. Well, this was a game that was first made for like 8-year-olds. And so these guys are in their late 20s, early 30s now. They're having families of their own. They're reliving these experiences and these good memories and playing the game with their kids.
I was playing Tai 2 and
So I'm actually gonna stop this here, just because I've seen it once, and the latter half of the video is kind of like fans saying like "Happy birthday, Ty," blah blah blah. It's just like an appreciation post kind of thing. But yeah, what did you guys think? Like, I know you have no experience with the game, but like, did you find the story behind it interesting? Like the development of it? It's kind of like a charming thing that's near and dear to my heart. But I thought that just the whole backstory with these developers was like really cool.
I think the game, the concept is cool and awesome. I think I probably would definitely enjoy a playthrough or just trying to play it. But I would love to see, I guess, like everyone, like people who play this as kids have nostalgia for it, and then even as adults, they let their inner child or enjoy it, and they still are into it 100%. I know you are into it 100%, and I resonate that because even though I've never had experience with the Tasmanian Tiger,
Right.
I have that experience with other video games, pieces of media, and franchises. So I connect with that very much, and I love to see that other people have that as well.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I want to show one last thing before we kind of like wrap it up on this topic.
Sure. Are you gonna show your kids the game? Are you gonna have them play it, or are you gonna like
my future children?
Yeah, your future, not your current children.
Right.
Future children.
Yeah.
Not that you have current children. But I in a manner I was like, can we extend it to like?
I think I would. I have a very, as you alluded to earlier, in a joking way, I have a very vast collection of video games, like physical copies of games, and I do. Although I don't really have a desire to replay them myself, because that's not like my personality. I do keep them as like trophies of like eating them over the years, as like my childhood and adulthood has progressed. And I'm totally open to letting my kids, relive kind of these fun experiences I had as a kid by playing my own video games.
Because that's just the guy was mentioning that like a lot of the people who develop games have their own children.
Right. Yeah. I think it would be a really cool like bonding experience.
Yeah, because I also think about that, like the things that I really enjoyed as a kid, whether or not, like what the balance is between introducing those things to your own children, as well as like the new things that are available at the time. You know what I'm saying? Like there's a balance, I guess.
Well, we were talking about newer technology, metaverse stuff, virtual reality, and I personally, not that I have kids now, but I think I want to like kind of shelter my kids from stuff like that for the time being until they're older, because it opens up a gateway to like, one, even if it's age appropriate content, it opens up a gateway to like disconnecting from reality.
Right.
My personal philosophy on like virtual reality is that like it's kind of like too much of an escape from reality, as opposed to like video games. Like, yeah, you're playing video games, it's kind of an escape, but you're confined to the borders of the television. Whereas with VR, you're like in the world, you get lost in that. It's so immersive.
Yeah. Oh, definitely, I agree with that. Yeah, I even think just though, like, I guess the children's media my parents grew up wasn't very good, but like when I was growing up, Finding Nemo came out,
Right.
and that's gonna be great. Like, I want my kids to see Finding Nemo because that would be incredible. But it's like, I'm sure that there'll be some like Finding Nemo level film
Right.
coming out at that time too.
So what is your opinion on the balance that you have to strike between like allowing them to discover their own interests and like kind of indoctrinating them into like your childhood?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess we'll have to wait and see. I definitely, because I have a lot I would want to show my children that when they're young. I'd want to show them like the Iron Giant and Nemo as far as movies are concerned.
Right.
Like, I'd start with those two. There be so many more. But it also, like, kids kind of don't just want the stuff that their parents like, especially when they become a little more cognizant of their own interests. And I don't know, a lot of stuff I discovered was really cool to me. So, I don't know, maybe I'll start a little heavy-handed, but if they attach themselves to certain things, I'll let them split it. Because I don't want to be, I want to like curate a world where they don't find anything that's not age appropriate or anything like that. But I do want them to gravitate to their own
that's
stuff.
such a big concern of mine because media nowadays really does not censor itself in any way, shape, or form.
Well, the
Young
internet
kids-
is pretty deep in that regard. Definitely, like, stuff like that is really precarious. But just like, I don't know,
Yeah.
media in general. I was just curious because he brought up that point, but we can.
Yeah, I just want to show you, like, so they are remastering the third game eventually. They haven't announced anything, but I think they will be. And there is a fourth game that they made just for PC that's like a side scroller. I was really disappointed that they did that because not only did they not release it on any platforms at the time, but it's also like not a 3D platform, it's a 2D side scrolling platform.
What
And-
is this?
It was like over 5 years ago. I don't know how like this particular year. I never played it. It was very off-brand for like what I was used to with the games. But seeing as technology is evolving, they did render Thai for the 20th anniversary in like the latest, whatever the latest engine is. I think it's called like Unity.
It was Unity.
Is that what it is?
That's a game engine.
Yeah, so they rendered it in Unity, and they have a little advert I want to like show. I think it's really cool. Like, the graphics are like very high quality.
It almost looks like a trailer, so.
Yeah, a little bit. I think it's cool. He's in his like his outfit from the third game, but it's like very HD with a few other accessories. But I would love to see a Thai. I guess it would be Thai 5 with these graphics. That would be a really like a real big treat. If they did stuff similar, like on PS3. They came out with a fourth Sly Cooper game with like very enhanced graphics, which was like a great surprise for like Sly Cooper fans at the time. But yeah, no, I don't know. It's just like something that like gets me excited.
I'm glad you shared that.
Yeah, thank you guys for listening. I don't know if people who watch our show would find it interesting, but it's like a little piece of my heart. You know what I mean?
It's cool, like, it's personal relation to you and also just the concepts involved. I really, the games endear to me, but those sort of things are.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Well, guys, thank you for tuning into this episode. Just as like a few quick announcements, we are on so many more platforms than we've ever been lately. We are on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. We started a Patreon, so if you want to back us, you can actually subscribe for just $1 a month. And we have other tiers that gets you exclusive content. We've actually been recording Patreon exclusive episodes behind the scenes of our regular content, so check that out if you so choose. And we're also on, we have our GoFundMe that's almost at its goal. I was able to fund enough to replace one of my Magic Gathering Commander decks, because we've been like kind of, pushing on a few episodes. So thank you guys for that. And yeah, is that it?
That's it.
I think that's it.
Subscribe to the YouTube.
Like and subscribe.
Like, subscribe, follow, save, share our posts, and yeah, keep enjoying our content. Thank you so much.
And send us something that you grew up with that you really was nostalgic for you, and like explain why.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, like drop it in the comments.
Yeah, drop it in the comments. Put a few words about something that really means something to you from growing up, your childhood, whether it's media, books, TV, video games, anime, audio of any sort, music. So let us know. Thanks.